What is going on, everybody? Welcome back. This is Hawk Talk on Melrose following Iowa's 13-10 win in Lincoln to cap off a 10-win season. I believe this is now the seventh time in under Ferentz, and obviously a huge accomplishment, especially considering everything that has happened in the course of this season with the injuries, with the offensive coordinator. It's pretty big deal, and we're on our way to Indy. We'll talk a little bit about that game. Obviously, it's going to be a huge task, and I think for most people, we're not trying to be negative, but it's probably going to be – we already kind of know what's going to happen. Let's just say that. But still a huge thing. It's still an awesome accomplishment, and being able to get back to Indy at any point, any season, you can never just not – enjoy it. So got Tyler here. We're recording this on Sunday, so Thanksgiving's over with, and we are now into the Christmas season and football season, which kind of unfortunately sucks, is starting to kind of dwindle down in college football. NFL still obviously has a few more months left, but the season is coming to an end. What's going on, man?
Yeah, it's coming up to be coming up on the best time of year, which, like you said, is awesome for Christmas time. But that means football is going to be, at least college football anyway, is going to be wrapping up sooner rather than later, which obviously sucks. Not many games left actually to watch for Iowa football. We got two left. So, like you said, man, what a big win. Obviously, we'll dive into the game. How the game ended, like, you can't even script that. That was crazy. And yeah, what an accomplishment to get to 10 wins. I'll be honest with you. Like, I think me and you at the beginning of the season thought that could be realistic. 9-3, 10-2. But man, with the way the season was going, and like you said, with the injuries and the offensive coordinator drama, and I'll be honest, I didn't see it. And give a lot of credit to Kirk and the staff, and just obviously the players going out there and getting it done. 10-2 feels a lot different than 9-3. I can tell you that. It's awesome.
It definitely does. And it was something that we said last week, looking at this Nebraska game, technically, does it really matter if we lose? No, but I want to get to 10 wins. It's just a huge accomplishment, and keeping Nebraska out of a bowl game, that's huge. So
we did that. Yep.
We did all that.
Fantastic.
Before we dive into the game, I do want to say, I know I always kind of forget to mention this stuff. So obviously we are on YouTube, which lately it's been really good for us, and we really appreciate that. But not only on YouTube, if you're listening to this on YouTube, we are also on other platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, you name it, we're on it. Make sure you go and subscribe there. Or if you like listening to us on YouTube, I like YouTube because you can see us, see our faces. I guess you can see that on Spotify too. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review and do all those things. It just helps us. And I know I always forget to put that out there. So I'm going to put that out there before I forget about it, because I'm going to forget about it. We're going to get into Iowa football. And before you know it, it's like the end of the podcast, and I don't feel like doing it at that point. So I do want to mention all that stuff. So let's get into the game now. We'll just real quick, because it's been a few days, and, moving on to the Big Ten championship game. But, let's give it to Marshall Meter, a guy from Central Michigan that I didn't even know about. I knew we brought in a kicker when that whole gambling situation. I forgot who the kicker was. Aaron Bloom. I forgot what his name was.
Yeah.
But obviously he got canned for, got kicked off the team for the gambling, or I don't even know if he got kicked off the team, but he was obviously suspended. And actually I think he was, because I think he was actually betting. He was betting actually Iowa games. So I'm pretty sure, at that point you're done. Yeah. So we bring in this guy from Central Michigan, and give credit to Kirk Fetentz. One of the biggest, decisions that you can make. Now, Drew Stevens had 2 blocked field goals last week, which you're saying it's a block. I don't know if it was or not, but regardless, you miss a PAT, which should never happen. Then you kick 2 balls out of bounds on kickoffs, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but that's 10 extra yards that
for Iowa it is.
It is. Yep, exactly.
It is for Iowa.
So you have all that in play, and this was all in the first half, essentially. And I said to you, I actually tweeted it too at halftime. It's like, obviously his confidence, Drew Stevens' confidence is shot. Doesn't mean that he's a bad player all of a sudden. It's just, as a kicker, it's such a mental thing. And if your confidence is shot, you almost just can't ride with the guy. You got to almost go with someone else. And so I wanted that to happen, but I actually thought there would be maybe another opportunity like in the third quarter or something where, we would get a kick, anywhere on the field, but it didn't happen. It finally happened at the end of the game. And man, that's such a tough decision. It's like, okay, you go with the guy that, yes, is struggling, but has been in those situations. I mean, hell, he was in that same situation on November 4th against Northwestern, and what was that, a 53-yarder, and he nailed it.
Yep.
So do you go with that guy, or do you go with the guy that has never kicked a field goal yet this year, and you're bringing him in really shitty situations, right, with the wind, with the cold, and essentially it's you win it, we're 10-win season. You beat Nebraska. You don't make it, we're going to overtime, and I'm honestly going to say it, if we go into overtime in that game, I just don't know if we win that game, and we could talk about that a little bit more here, but Kirk Ferentz brings him out and he nails it. And looking at some different replays, he didn't make it by a whole hell of a lot.
No, that's what everyone was saying on Twitter, dude. Like, they're like, if you actually go back and watch it, and like you said, I think there's a specific angle, like it just clears it. Like, and I honestly, that was my initial thing right away when I saw it. I'm like, dude, is this going to get in? Like, I'm just waiting to see this underneath the goalpost, right? Because I'm like, I wasn't 100% confident, because it did not look like it had enough on it, and with the wind and everything else that day, like, you just never know. But yeah, dude, gutsy call by Kirk, because like you said, it's such a, I mean, it literally decides the game, obviously. And yeah, like you said, I mean, you go with the guy that you went with all year, and Drew Stevens, who's been clutch, believe it or not. I know but he's been struggling so much as of late. It's always, he's always going 1 for 2 or whatever. But this game, I mean, he was 1 for 3. Both of them were, the 2 that he missed were blocked. He'd been kicking the ball out of bounds. Like, at that point, I think Kirk was like, I just don't think it's his day. I'm not saying he's not going to be back as the main kicker for the Big Ten championship. I don't know, but clearly in Lincoln on Friday, it was not his day. And yeah, gutsy move. I mean, because like you said, that decides the game. And sure enough, a guy I'd never heard of, does what I didn't think was even possible. Because like, it's such a pressurized situation. I mean, you laid it out there. It's not only to win, the game, but obviously, like, he'd never kicked in a game before. Like, I don't know. Credit to him, he made it. So
going into the game, hey, by the way, my prediction for this game was 13-10. So
I finally, you said,
it's so easy at this point.
You could have said that for any game, and you're always going to be right around there. But yeah, you called it. So
so I said on the last episode that I didn't feel confident in our offense, because given Nebraska's defense is actually really good. I've been saying that all year. Nebraska has a really good defense, but I said that what makes me feel confident is it's Nebraska, and they turn the ball over like every single game, no matter what. And they had 3 turnovers this game. Should have been 4, because I don't know if you remember that one that Chubba he was just running and he just
falls out.
Yeah. And I don't know how we didn't get on top of that, by the way. So it should have had 4 turnovers. Correct. But it really came down to that, because once again, Nebraska had more total yards than us. We did have more first downs. Their third down efficiency was a little bit better than us. Time of possession, we were a little bit more, but it essentially came down to 3 turnovers to only 1 turnover for us. And honestly, our turnover could have been very costly, because it was at the end of the game. Deacon Hill, I don't know what he was throwing to. Man, we could talk about this. His second half was horrible. But really, they had that one penalty on that pick that really determined everything. They had that holding call, which was like a 10 yards from the foul, and that set them back. If that guy doesn't hold them, they're already almost in field goal range. I don't know if you remember that.
I was texting you, I'm like, ball game. And then they had the penalty, and I'm like, wow, we survived that. Yeah.
So we got extremely lucky there with that penalty, because that turnover was horrible. But yeah, Deacon Hill, man, like the first half, and I know you didn't really watch much of the first half because you were working, and I was telling you, it's like, it was actually like not bad. Now, yes, we weren't like finishing drives, which was annoying, but like we were moving the ball, and like Deacon Hill wasn't bad in the first half. We were running the ball pretty good, but that second half, man, it was horrible. I mean, we didn't get one first down until like towards the end of the game. Deacon Hill was just, I mean, some of those throws were just like, what are you throwing to? Now, I will give him, I mean, that one to Caleb Brown, Caleb should have caught that. I mean, yes, it was a little hard of a throw, but that's why you use your hands. You can never use your body, dude. And like, I'm sure Caleb wants that ball back because that should have been a touchdown. But some of his throws were just awful on Friday, and a little bit probably has to do with the weather conditions. My hope, obviously, our shots of winning next week are very, 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 very small. But you have to hope that he can play a little bit better, because if he plays like that against Michigan, I mean, we already have such a small chance. It's going to be even smaller. You would think in a dome with no weather that maybe he can be a little bit better, because that was really bad. I mean, 11 for 28, 94 yards, 1 interception. It's not going to get the job done.
No. And two things. To piggyback off that, the problem with that is you're going up against Michigan, who's the number one scoring defense in the country. So, like you said, if we're going to have any chance, and I'm not going to get on here and say that we're going to win, because I'm not, but if we're going to have any chance to be competitive, to somehow do the impossible, he's going to have his best game of his life, clearly. And he can't do what he did on Saturday in the second half. Like, I was joking with you. I'm like, because you mentioned I had to work for most of the first half. I got back with about 5 minutes to go, and we were running the ball, and LaShawn had a good run. And, I kind of looked up on the ESPN app, kind of following the game as I was on the way home. And I'm like, yeah, we actually were doing decent offensively in that first half. And then, besides that, I sit down and I'm watching the second half, and I'm like, maybe I'm the reason. Maybe I'm.
Yeah, you got to stop watching, Tyler.
Yeah, because man, we had like up into that last like drive, or like obviously when we got or maybe it didn't even include the last drive where we got that long run. We had like 24 yards of offense in the second half. That is, I don't care who you're playing. I don't care if it's Michigan. That is unacceptable. Like, you're not playing to win at that point. And I know a lot of it had to do with Deacon being inaccurate. And I just wonder, it's like, I mean, this might just be who Deacon is. He might be okay. Like, he's going to be never great. I think his ceiling is average.
Yep.
But there's more often than not, there's going to be times where I think he's going to be below average. And I just fear that it, could be the case, obviously, next week. But you just can't have that type of performance. No.
It's really annoying. One thing with Deacon is like he has no touch and his accuracy is so bad that you can't even really like throw the ball down the field, because it's like he's never accurate enough to even be able to hit guys down the field.
To say every time it's an overthrow, right? And I feel like we're so used to that as Iowa fans with like some of these quarterbacks. Like, it's like, why don't we ever get a guy that has decent touch?
Yeah. But once again, and it's he finished 11 for 28, but there was 3 plays specifically I remember drop passes. 2 Nico drop. Just, it's like, yes, the ball was kind of thrown hard, but it's like, come on, like, Nico, you've been here for a while, like, you should catch those balls. And then obviously Caleb's.
Yeah, you that's all on him, man. You
need to catch
you
that.
Watch the replay, and even though now it's just like you can't use your body in that situation. It bounced right off his pads. You could see it. So you got to use your hands.
A few more things. I thought, 4.1 yards per rush for Iowa. That's really good. LaShawn Williams, 111 yards. I mean, our rushing this year has been a lot better. I mean, if you could take anything positive out of this offense, we have been able to run the ball a lot more effectively. We have 3 guys. It seems like every game it's like, okay, one guy goes off, which is a good problem to have, like where one guy does really good, the other guys don't. And then the next game, it's the other guy. And then one other thing too is like finishing drives. I mean, I think it was the first quarter. I mean, they had that muff punt. Or I don't even think it was a muff punt. I think we just tackled hard and the guy fumbled. We get the ball at the 17-yard line and we don't get any points out of it. That was one of the blocked field goals. And it's like, you got to be able to put up something. If you start at the 17-yard line, it's a guarantee. It should be a minimum 3 points. And then
Iowa, in their offense, you have to have that.
Yes. And then at the end of the first half, when LaShawn Williams broke for that huge run, we got at like the 9-yard line. Once again, minimum 3 points. And we get nothing. I mean, you go into halftime, I will give Nebraska credit on their long pass. Some people could say, oh, it should have been 16-0 because that should never happen. I'll give them credit on that. That was a good play design. They saw the safeties come up. They had a pretty much kind of like a seam route for their guy. And it was
in the slot. Yeah, it was a good
yep.
play. He just got
And
beat, so.
I didn't really necessarily agree. I mean, I love Phil, and I always agree with a lot of his stuff. That was the one thing I was like, what are we doing? Why are we bringing, Chubba Purdy can't do anything against our defense. Make him beat you. Why are we trying to be all fancy, bring the safeties down, do a fake safety blitz? It's just like, I don't really like that in that situation, but it happens. They get the long ball. But we should have minimum had at least 16 points going into halftime. It should have been 16-6 or 16-7. If not, maybe one of those drives a touchdown. I mean, like Caleb Brown, should have caught that. Should have been a touchdown. So we could have went into halftime
100%.
being like, this game's over with because, I mean, if we're up by 10 points, like I don't see Nebraska scoring another touchdown, another field goal. But no, we go into half like, oh my God, we're only up 10-7 when it should be more than that. And that's what really sucked. Like finishing drives was just so annoying that day. And then we counted because we obviously watched in a group. There was 3 3rd and 9s, or no, 3rd and 11s, and 1 3rd and 10 where they 4 times where they, and one of them was that touchdown where they picked up. And it just, that stuff gets very annoying. And someone brought up a good point that was with us. They were like, seems like we're actually better when it's like 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 4 than we are like 3rd and 11, which makes zero sense. But those were some of the things that, like, looking back on, like, obviously we won, so it doesn't matter. But that stuff is what annoys me. It's like finishing drives, and then when it's 3rd and 11, 3rd and 10, or 3rd and long in general, you need to get off the field. End of story.
Yeah. The finishing drives part's a good point, Colin. I didn't think of that. Obviously, you can't account for missed field goals, right? I mean, you're assuming that you get an automatic 3, but that's where it's like, I hate that, where it's almost like we're fine with 3. It's like, no, let's get into the freaking end zone.
Yep.
We got to figure it out. And we obviously don't do much with it.
Were you working? Sorry to interrupt, but were you still at work when I think it was 7-0 and we were driving and we elected to do a run on 3rd and 9? Just get a field goal, because at that point we felt like, if we kick a field goal here.
I was not home yet. No.
Yeah. So that's kind of what you saying. Like sometimes we just like think like,
we're okay with 3. And that's like, again, I know that's a philosophy thing. I know that's like Kirk, like just, we'll take the 3 point. It's like, man, that's the part that like frustrates, I think, you and I, because it's like, a lot of teams are gonna pass and gonna attempt to try to get that first down, right? Like you had just mentioned. And that's what drives me nuts is, I mean, now you're essentially banking on the fact that our kicker, who's not been great this year, is gonna make that, and obviously he didn't. So puts us in a bind. That's my big thing too. And you had texted me, you're like, about the long 3rd down conversions that Nebraska was getting against us. You're like, yeah, why are we blitzing? Why are we bringing up these safeties? Or why are we sending like a Sebastian Castro blitz? It's like, just play coverage, make them earn it. Like, don't give them the deep ball. Don't give them, like, we hadn't done that really all year, I feel like. And I don't know if like we just saw something that made us think that was going to be more effective, but we kind of bailed them out a few times, definitely on 3rd downs, like you mentioned. And when I think, it seemed like the first, I don't know if I can't say this for certain, but it seemed like on 1st and 2nd down, we weren't doing much of that, and they weren't getting many yards, obviously, if you're in 3rd and long. And then all of a sudden we bring the blitz, and then, they are able to convert. It's like, well, now you're kind of bailing them out with it, but
it's just so funny. So as much as like you get like pissed by Phil, throughout the game, he kind of comes back at the end and says, because then he does that play call where he does a blitz, but he drops DN into coverage, which is a beautiful play call.
Yeah.
And obviously Chubba, you might be like, why would Chubba even throw that? I don't even think he even like saw.
Explanation.
Yes.
Only explanation. He never saw him, which is crazy. But like, I think he was staring down that receiver over the middle, and he was wanting to go to him the whole way and kind of made up his mind with it. And he never saw Ethan Hurd.
Which, thank God for him dropping back, because he would have been open. I don't know if you saw that or not.
Oh yeah.
And once again,
he threw it.
Yeah.
I think he was looking at the receiver corner and like, he's like, oh, he's open. Never saw the end drop. So
they would have been at about the 40-yard line if they would have caught that. And they would still probably needed at least 5-10 more yards to kick a good, because they were going against the wind. But I
was not
mean,
feeling
that
good.
would have been more than likely kind of a nail in the coffin at that point.
Yeah.
Another thing too with this game, Caleb Brown obviously getting hurt. Sounds like he had a concussion, because I was wondering, I was like, when did he get hurt? Because when he dropped that pass at the end of the first half, I mean, like
and we didn't know about it. Like, it was like the sideline reporter was like, whatever offensive lineman Dunker, maybe.
Yeah, James Dunker got hurt and
Caleb Brown are questionable. It's like, wait, what? Cool. Yeah, we had no idea about it.
But it sounds like because I'm VIP on some of the boards, and someone said that barring a medical setback, he should be back this week, which once again, it doesn't really matter. No, but it's like, okay, if you want, if you want any shot, you need to have the best players out there.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes into the next thing I was going to talk about. And then we can kind of end it talking a little bit about the Big Ten championship game. Obviously we'll have another podcast out later this week, but it's just something I like, the culture of this program for everything that happened. I mean, most programs out there, you could argue 90% of programs out there, given everything that has kind of happened this year with the injuries, with, how the offensive coordinator, all that kind of went down, with how bad the offense is and the defense always having to bail out the offense, how the defensive players never get mad, or special teams, how everybody just kind of stays intact. I mean, man, you got to give credit where credit's due. This coaching staff, the leadership, the culture. And it's like, no wonder, like Iowa, every year, we always find ourselves at the end of the year, more times than not, always in great position. And it's kind of goes down to that, just the consistency and the culture. I wanted to throw that out there because it's obviously a huge feat to get to 10 wins. I don't care how bad the Big Ten West is. The Big Ten West wasn't good, but, we won our games in the Big Ten West, and, we won by 3 games comfortably. So, next week probably will get blown out. I mean, it's probably a given, but still, just given everything that has happened to even get to that point, and, hope for the best for next week. It's an incredible thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too, Collin. I mean, a lot of teams, a lot of players could have mailed it in. They could have quit. They could have said, well, this sucks. Like, it is what it is. Like, why even try? Like, why Caleb Brown, for example, that's a guy who never got the ball for how many games? And, he stuck with it. And a lot of credit to him, man, because he stuck with it, and he's seeing his opportunities late at the end of the season, which is great. Guys like that, just, when you're talking offense, like you said, that's pretty cool. And like you said, that has a lot to do with Kirk. That has a lot to do with the coaching staff. I mean, I still think that has a lot to do with Brian. I mean, you saw the reaction that he got after beating Illinois. I mean, I still think guys respect him and what he does.
Yep.
So, to keep the team together like that, pretty big feat for sure. Because this could have went south real quick. That's for sure. 10 wins with the worst offense in college football. I think they showed the stat. What was it? A team with under 250 yards of average offense had only won like 4 games up until that point or something.
I do remember seeing that. Yeah,
won 10 games. Crazy. And I know what you can mention the Big Ten West. I get that's all part of it, and I understand that. I'm not unrealistic, but still crazy to think about.
Yeah, it is. And going into the Big Ten championship game, man, like I so bad wish Cade was healthy and Eric all. Because I know a little bit for Cade coming to Iowa was to be able to get back to the Big Ten championship game and play his former team. Yep. And we are there, and it just sucks that, without them. And it really makes you wonder, okay, like we got 10 wins without Cade, without Cade, without Eric, without Lucas Shea. Like, if they were all healthy, and I'm talking Cade actually being healthy, not like, because he was not obviously healthy those first couple games. Healthy Cade, all those guys. Like, how much? Like we already made it anyways this year. Like, how much easier we would have made it. Like, we obviously would have beat Minnesota. Like, I feel like it would have been like, we would have probably been Big Ten West champions like 3 weeks ago already. Probably with those guys. I mean, the offense probably still wouldn't have been that good. I think we already kind of know the limitations, but I think it would have been a lot better. Given a healthy, all those guys being healthy. And I'm talking, like I said, with Cade, like actually being healthy, not what he was those first 3 weeks, because he was obviously not healthy then. But so it really does suck going into the Big Ten championship game. Not like we would have that big of a chance, but man, if you told me right now, like Eric All was healthy, Luke Lachey was healthy, Cade McNamara was healthy, Cooper DeJean was healthy. I mean,
I'm feeling a
little bit better.
I'm not saying we're winning, but I'm saying it could. You never know. Like it
exactly,
it could. You know, we could be in it later, third quarter, fourth quarter type of thing.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. I mean, because I remember 2 years ago, and I know we got blown out that year, but I actually kind of felt like kind of confident because I was like, you know, no one's giving us a chance. You know, we were not seriously injured going to that game. I remember we had all our pieces, Tyler Goodson. We had, you know, our guys. Our defense was pretty good that year. So I was like, you know, maybe we can shock the world. This year, it's a little bit different than that. I mean, obviously, you know, given how good Michigan is, given how injured and just offensively not good, it just doesn't feel like it. But it does, you know, it gives you that question, like if all those guys were healthy, like I honestly would feel a little confident, like, hey, maybe we can go in there and do something.
Yeah. You have a different outlook on it for sure. You don't just automatically assume anything, I feel like, or as much as we are right now, obviously, with and then a lot of that has to do with just them Michigan looking good against Ohio State. And, you know, that was because that's the number 1 and number 2 scoring defense going up against each other. And they were able to, you know, put up points on both. So obviously both, no matter who we were going to play, it's going to be tough.
It was going to be really tough. And actually we could talk about that right now because Colby and I were talking about this yesterday. We're like, who would we rather play? Not like it really matters, but who would we rather play? And like, you can make the argument, okay, if you wanted Ohio State over Michigan, it's like, okay, well then who's gonna guard Marvin Harrison Jr. and those receivers? Like it's almost a guarantee that he's gonna score a couple touchdowns. So, but then you can make the case, okay, well, I'd rather play them because Michigan's just way more physical. They almost have like a chip on their shoulders with this whole, you know, Jim Harbaugh thing.
Yeah.
And JJ McCarthy's a stud. And they have a good run game,
like experience over Kyle McCord type of thing.
And they've been in that situation before. So you could make the case for both. I don't know. Who would you rather see this week?
To be honest, I've thought about this and I still can't make up my mind because of those exact reasons. I think we match up better against Michigan, but it's almost like I've seen this before, like against Michigan, the same type of team. Run first. JJ actually has been playing good as of late, like throwing the ball. Honestly, just because it's different, I think I'd take my chances maybe against Ohio State this particular year. You'd find a way to double team Marvin Harrison and make somebody else beat you. Now, I'm not saying that it's just Marvin Harrison because they've got Abuka and they've got Fleming and Cade Stover's a good tight end, but I don't know. I just take my chances with them. And then Michigan's defense has been so good. And obviously Ohio State's is really good this year, but it's weird for me to say, but I think maybe I'd take Ohio State and Kyle McCord, I could see him getting throwing a pick against our defense because he's a younger, inexperienced guy as compared to JJ, who's been in this now for freaking 3 straight years. So.
Yeah, if we had Cooper DeJean, it'd be a little bit easier to say Ohio State, even though I still think Marvin Harrison would pick even him apart because he's just so good. Yeah. But it's like now even more, it's like, gosh, like, can you imagine Jamari Harris or Deshaun Lee on him?
Constantly double him and make somebody else beat you, which would probably still happen, but I don't know.
I'm not lying when I say this.
Phil would come up with something. I feel better about Phil than I do Brian, so I don't know.
I'm not lying when I say this. Iowa really needs to just watch the film of the Maryland game 2 weeks ago because that was the one team that actually gave Michigan fits. I mean, Michigan only won 31-24 at Maryland. Now, you can make the case, you know, it's a look-ahead game to Ohio State. You know, it's on the road. But really, just see what Maryland did because they were the only team this year that really, like, now Penn State, obviously, 24-15, which you figured that would be a closer game because it's Penn State. They're good. But in terms of like inferior opponents, they were the only team this year that actually put up a fight against Michigan. You gotta watch what they must have done something. And so I don't really know. I didn't really watch much Michigan this year. Like obviously we watched, you know, bits and pieces. You know, the Rutgers game, we were down in Phoenix. I remember Rutgers got out to 7-0, but then after that it was 31-7. Then they played at Nebraska. They won 45-7, at Minnesota 52-10, Indiana 52-7, Michigan State 49-0, Purdue 41-13. But the Maryland game was a one game, 31-24, that they actually Maryland competed in. I don't know what they did that game, but
And I
if
don't
you're
think
Iowa,
Tally, if I could go, I don't have the stats in front of me. I don't think Tagovailoa had it. Even that, I think he threw a couple picks in that game, and they were still in it.
I'm looking right
if
now.
I can remember correctly.
Maryland had 3 turnovers.
Yeah.
So Michigan was held to 291 yards against Maryland's defense. It's not that. So I don't know. What did I would have to go back. I kind of want to go back and watch that game and just see what they did. But if I'm Iowa, maybe just see what they did. What did they do to hold Michigan back a little bit?
I mean, I think, like you said, I think some of it has to do with the fact that they just weren't their best that day.
Yeah,
they were maybe looking ahead, and maybe they just didn't have their best stuff that day. It happens over the course of the season. So
and I really think the majority is probably that reason of just looking ahead, right? Because that's such a big game. I mean, when we talk Iowa State, I mean that's one thing. But this is like
talking about the game. Right?
Yes, it's so much bigger. And I don't know if you remember, but like last year, the week before that game, Michigan played Illinois. And I remember like Illinois was like really close to beating them. And it was at Michigan. And I remember like Michigan struggled like mightily against them. I want to go back and look at. Yep. And so I remember like Chase Brown for Illinois like went off. And so, yeah, it's probably a lot to do with that. Yeah, Michigan won 19-17. So a lot of it's just like you look ahead to that game, and that's probably the majority of the reason. But I would still, like, if I'm Iowa, I would still see like what did Maryland do to at least limit them, regardless of that situation. So
yep. And I know we'll talk about it, but yeah, obviously Jim Harbaugh is back for the game, so
which is so stupid. It's like cool suspension, gets to come back for that game.
And Iowa's luck, right? So I'm sure they're going to be extra motivated now. I'm sure. So we'll dive into it, but I remember in the Big Ten championship last year, freaking they threw out their trick plays just like we did. So I'm sure I could see something like that happening again.
What do you remember what I'm looking at right now, but you might know. What was the final score of that game last year when they played Purdue in the Big Ten championship game?
No idea.
43-22.
Okay.
So at halftime, it was 14-13. I would take that. Even if we lost 43-22.
That's respectable. And I would have just said it had to have been like, I mean, you have to like hope that we can somehow keep it lower scoring, because that's like your only chance. You have to be in it in the fourth quarter to have any chance. But
exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm like you said, I know the Nebraska game had nothing to do with the Big Ten championship, but it was, I mean, the end of that game, I was so negative in the second half because, like you said, that was the majority of what I was able to watch. And I thought there was zero chance we were winning that game. So, sure enough, defense comes up with a defense and special teams spent all year. And, that might have to be the case again come next Saturday.
Obviously living in Lincoln, a lot of Nebraska fans are texting me like after, and they were obviously bitter, but they were like, have fun getting, next week or whatever. And, for me, it's like, just losing by a lot, which is probably going to happen. And it's like, you know what? I'd still rather go than not go at all. I don't care if, yes, we probably will get blown out. I'd rather go to the Big Ten championship game. It's another game to look forward to. Another Iowa football game. Yep. It's what you play for.
Be in this game.
Because the way I look at it is you have 0% chance if you don't even get there to win the Big Ten championship. At least it's a little bit better of a chance if you at least get there, because you never know. And I always go, or you can go.
No, I was just going to say, so Nebraska fans, the same fans that aren't making it to a bowl game were making fun of us for being in the Big Ten championship and potentially losing by a lot. That makes a lot of sense. But okay, that's all I wanted to say.
I always go back to just like, no one gave us, back on November 4th of 2017 when we played Ohio State and we won 55-24, which, yes, that's like a 1 in like 1,000 times that's ever going to happen. Like if we played Ohio State 10 times, again, we probably lose 8 or 9, but we caught them on the right day, and it just everything aligned, and it was what happened. And so if you don't get there, it's never going to happen, but you at least have to get there and just see. And so for me, it's like, I'd rather go. Yes, more than likely it's going to be a blowout. More than likely we're going to lose, but I'd still rather go, given that there's still a sliver chance that maybe something will happen.
Well, I'd make for the greatest game of your entire life if it happened. So
exactly. So that's just kind of like my 2 cents of like going or not going.
That's why you cheer, man. That's why you cheer for your team. That's the whole goal, is to get to a Big Ten championship, right?
Yep. I mean, you should. I mean, you win 10 games, you should be awarded something. Now, like last year, I remember we were like 7-4 going to the Nebraska game. And it's like, if you win that, you make it. And it's like, God, like that record, like I still obviously wanted to go like last year because it's like you never won it. But yeah, it didn't really feel like this year. It's like, dude, you won 10 games. You're 10. You should have won 11 games. Like let's face it, that was BS. Should be 11-1, but you're 10-2. You should rightfully deserve to go to Big Ten championship game and see what happens. So,
also says I think Kirk Fetentz deserves Big Ten Coach of the Year. I mean, I'm biased, but like to do that with the worst offense in the country is not anyone else. I don't think could do it.
No, that is like I said, a huge accomplishment. So, well, that will do it for this episode. We'll be back on Wednesday night. Well, I guess Thursday, but we'll be recording Wednesday night, going over the Big Ten championship game. And I'm glad we're able to make one more kind of final episode of kind of the regular season, if you want to call it that. It's always good for that. So obviously if we weren't making it, this would kind of be the last one until we'd probably take off a few weeks until we get into the bowl game. But we'll be back on that. We'll probably honestly, because like on Wednesday night, we'll talk a little bit about the game, but there's really not like that much to kind of cover. We'll probably get into other topics for college football because we haven't really talked much about that. We'll go over the other Big Ten or the other conference championship games and the college football playoff rankings and how we see things kind of shake out, because Tuesday night they'll come out with the latest rankings, and it's going to be chaos this next week figuring out like who should make it, who shouldn't make it. And it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about.
I was going to say one more thing for me. And you mentioned Iowa should have been 11-1. I just thought how Kirk went off on that, just still how upset he is with the whole Minnesota thing. I thought that was hilarious.
Still BS.
Because he like even him to like he's not like he even mentioned he's not a guy to bring that up at this point. But it's just how like insane that was. I laughed when I saw that in the post game.
I just find it funny that Minnesota after that they only win one more game, and of course they're still getting awarded to go to a bowl game at 5-7.
That's crazy.
Freaking stupid. I was so happy.
Academics and the fact that like a lot of teams I think finished 5-7.
Yeah,
like the best of them. I don't understand.
I was so happy when Wisconsin beat them. It was like awesome. Like, and then it's like, oh no, never mind. They still get to go to a bowl game.
So stupid. Yeah. I hate that, but whatever.
Going back to a couple weeks ago when we were going over the schedule for next year, if Kirk Ferentz stays, like I am drawing that as a W up in Minnesota, because I really think that Kirk.
Oh my God.
I mean, if he's still talking about that game, game he is gonna want so bad that like I am automatically counting that as like a dub going next year, because that is number one. I think he hates PJ Fleck, and just the way how he is just so all about himself. Yeah. And then how everything kind of happened with this. Yeah. And you had PJ Fleck just being kind of a douche about it,
and like Kirk mentioned, like even about the specific play itself, he's like, I still don't have like an official answer. And he's like, we're still doing the same thing that we're doing before games, like talking to officials about the fair catch. It's still, this is considered a fair. So the whole thing is just funny to me, but yeah, I just had to throw that in there.
So dumb, but
one other is funny.
It is.
It is funny. So
one other thing, I know we're talking about football, but I was happy that Iowa won their last game, Seton Hall, for basketball. We were talking about that going into that game. Obviously, Thanksgiving Day, that was just a bad game. I couldn't really watch it because we were out playing football, but just a bad performance overall defensively. Now, I will admit Oklahoma, I think, is going to be pretty good this year, but we needed that win on Friday so bad. Like, you just can't go 0-2 in those tournaments. You got to win at least one. You got to start building up some wins, some quality wins. And so that was a big time win. And we looked so much better that night. Like, I know they came. Yeah, I know they came back, which it was a guarantee. I mean, I just feel like Iowa basketball, that always happens. But they came back a little bit. But man, like we just looked so much better. And I'm glad we got the dub. But we get one more kind of easy game, and then we play at Purdue, at Iowa State, and then Michigan, all in one week. Yeah, Monday, Thursday, Sunday.
Maybe the toughest stretch you'll ever see from Iowa basketball.
Yep. So you're going to have to go like 1-2, I would think, in that span, because I think Purdue's a guaranteed loss.
Yeah.
Because it's on the road. at Iowa State, although hey, they started off the year like they were dominating these bad teams, and it's like, oh my God, Iowa State. And then they should have lost to VCU. They were down by 15. They came back and won on Thanksgiving Day, and then they lose on Friday. Now they play today again. They play Texas A&M on this Sunday. Most people listening will probably know what the final score is, but they haven't looked very good in this tournament. So that game, it's not like a guaranteed loss. Now it's at Hilton, which is going to make it really, really difficult. But I would think Iowa at least has some sort of a chance, but really small. But then you got to beat Michigan at home then on that Sunday. You can't go 0-3 in that week.
No.
So
you got to beat somebody, right? You just have to. You can't go 0-3 in that stretch.
And then I think after that we play 3 more just crappy opponents. Take care of business. Don't let what happened last year where I think that was the middle of November or middle of December. We'll win these next 3 games and then we lose. And it's gosh, got to win those games and then we'll start Big Ten play. But I just want to throw that in there. It was a much needed win on Friday. We looked a lot better. So, well, that will do it for this episode. We'll be back on Wednesday night for Thursday. Until then, have a good week and go Hawks.